Today, I want to tell you about. It is an extremely bizarre and mysterious murder case. Some even consider it the Chinese version of the O.J. Simpson murder case. It could also be within China. One of the few cases. A near-perfect intentional murder case. Let's first take a look at the two main individuals involved in the case. The one on the left. He is the former assistant director of the Yunnan Provincial Maritime Administration in China. Former director of the Comprehensive Planning Department. And the one on the right. She is his young and beautiful cohabiting girlfriend. On a late spring night more than 10 years ago. This beautiful young woman is only 31 years old. She was buried in a ravine in a suburban villa community. After the investigation, the local police determined the owner of the villa. He is the victim's boyfriend, who was the director at the time. He has significant suspicion of being the perpetrator of the crime. However, after a tumultuous court trial, the only suspect in the case, he was acquitted and released. What kind of evidence was it? That led the local police to almost confirm. As the boyfriend of the director of the Aviation Administration, he is the murderer who killed his cohabiting girlfriend. And what was the reason? Which led the local court to deliver a not guilty verdict. Who is the real murderer, after all? Where is he hiding now? Good evening, everyone. Tonight, Uncle Long, filled with emotions. What I will tell you is, the beautiful young woman buried the body in the villa. The location of the incident. Located in the Huadu Spring City in the central part of Yunnan Province, China. Kunming City. March 13, 2012. In the Xuandian Hui and Yi Autonomous County under the jurisdiction of Kunming City, the criminal investigation team of the local police department suddenly received a report call from a subordinate police station. They said someone in Xuandian County, in a villa community near Jinso Street, a female body was dug up. About 20 minutes later, criminal investigation officers of the Xuandian County Police Department, they drove to the crime scene. According to the statement of the informant, Hu Jiangyang, the victim was his sister, Hu Zuying. She was 31 years old. From Xinla Town, Naxi District, Luzhou City, Sichuan Province. At that time, Hu Zuying's body was buried in a villa complex, in a ravine to the southwest. When it was dug up, the entire body was in a curled position. She was wearing a pink pajama set. However, she was not wearing shoes on her feet. And her hands, her feet and neck, they were all bound with adhesive tape. Her head was also wrapped in a black plastic bag. After cutting open the plastic bag, a pure cotton towel was covering Hu Zuying's face. The entire towel was soaked with blood. In addition, the forensic doctor also found at the chest area of Hu Zuying's pajama set, a large stain of blood was found. According to the preliminary investigation results, the deceased Hu Zuying while she was alive, she must have suffered extremely brutal treatment. And the process of discovering her body, it was also quite bizarre. According to the statement of her brother, Hu Jiangyang, on the morning of March 10, 2012, which was 3 days before the body was found, his mother suddenly received a call from her boyfriend, Chen Hui. During the call, Chen Hui urgently told Hu Zuying's mother that her daughter left home on the afternoon of March 9. She still hadn't returned by the next morning. During this time, Hu Zuying's phone was unreachable. No text messages were replied to either. And on the evening of March 9, Chen Hui also went out to search for Hu Zuying's whereabouts. As a result, no news about her was found. After receiving the call from Chen Hui, Hu Jiangyang, along with several relatives and friends from the family, they hurried overnight from the countryside of Luzhou to Kunming City. They first went to the local police station. They reported a missing person case. Then they visited some places that Hu Zuying frequently went to. They inquired and searched. Until 3 days later, on March 13, Hu Jiangyang, along with 2 friends, they arrived at a suburb of Kunming City, a villa community called Red Manor. Because of her boyfriend, Chen Hui, he had previously purchased a villa in the Red Manor community, so they thought to come and take a look. Was there anything unusual? As a result, near Chen Hui's villa, about 300 meters away from Chen Hui's villa, there was a a ravine with sparse vegetation. Hu Jiangyang and the others discovered a small area of fresh soil. At this point, it had been a while since Hu Zuying's disappearance. 4 days had already passed. Therefore, Hu Jiangyang and the others immediately had a feeling. A bad premonition. So, they brought tools with them. They prepared to dig into the new soil to see what was inside. As soon as they dug up some of the surface soil, they discovered a black plastic bag. At that moment, a friend nearby reminded Hu Jiangyang that, if we dig out such a large area, it might destroy some things at the crime scene. Therefore, Hu Jiangyang called the police in advance. On the afternoon of the day they unearthed the body, the forensic expert issued an autopsy report. Through dissection and examination, the forensic doctor discovered blunt force trauma, multiple fractures and bleeding, the left temporal bone area of the skull, depressed and comminuted fractures, brain injury. Time of death, approximately 5 days before the autopsy, and through the contents of the stomach, as well as the analysis of the digestive contents in the duodenum, the forensic doctor inferred the specific time of death of Hu Zuying, over 6 hours since the last meal. In order to quickly apprehend the real culprit, the Xuandian police began investigating the social relationships of the deceased Hu Zuying. They conducted a survey and investigation. Their primary target for investigation. He is the cohabiting boyfriend of Hu Zuying, Chen Hui. Soon, the Xuandian police discovered Chen Hui, who was 46 years old at the time. He is not an ordinary commoner. He is the assistant director of the Yunnan Provincial Maritime Administration, director of the Comprehensive Planning Department. It was also in Yunnan Province. He is an expert in water conservancy construction. He holds a senior engineer title. Many years ago, Chen Hui divorced his ex-wife. His only daughter lives with him. In September 2009, due to business relations, Chen Hui met Hu Zuying at a hotel in Kunming. He met Hu Zuying, who worked in sales. At that time, Hu Zuying was also divorced. She had a 3-year-old son with her. They relied on each other for support. Although Chen Hui and Hu Zuying were 15 years apart in age. However, due to their similar circumstances, they quickly established a romantic relationship. And they lived together. About 6 months later, because the earnings were not much and it was hard work, Hu Zuying resigned from the hotel. She opened a clothing store afterwards. However, the store closed shortly after opening. So before her death, Hu Zuying was in a state of unemployment. According to her boyfriend Chen Hui, Hu Zuying did not have many friends in society. Due to being at home taking care of the child, she rarely went out for social engagements. However, on the afternoon of March 9, 2012, around 3 o'clock, Chen Hui had received a text from Hu Zuying's phone. A text message was sent. The content of the message basically said, Hu Zuying encountered an old friend she hadn't seen in years, and was planning to meet for dinner. So Hu Zuying asked Chen Hui to help pick up the child from school, saying she would be home a little later. However, by around 10 p.m. that night, his girlfriend, Hu Zuying, still hadn't returned. Moreover, her phone had been turned off. Chen Hui said, that night, he went out searching for her for the entire night. However, he still couldn't find out any news about Hu Zuying. By the next morning, Chen Hui gradually began to realize that Hu Zuying might be in trouble. But he never expected that Hu Zuying's body would actually be found next to his villa. Through preliminary interviews and investigations, the Sun Dian police learned that the Red Manor community where Chen Hui's villa is located was developed and built as early as the 1990s. The development and construction have already been completed. However, due to its location on the outskirts of Kunming, the occupancy rate of the entire community is not high. The internal green areas of the community are sparse, making it look rather desolate. Chen Hui's farmhouse-style villa is located in the northwest corner of the Red Manor, and its geographical location is also quite remote. According to Chen Hui, he and Hu Zuying do not usually live here. They only come here occasionally during holidays, as a place for leisure and entertainment. As for Hu Zuying's body, why it appeared next to his own villa, Chen Hui stated that he was not clear about it. He could only roughly guess. It might be that Hu Zuying came to the villa with a friend, and then encountered an accident here at the villa. That's why the body was buried near the villa. If that is really the case, then on the day of the incident, who could that old friend with Hu Zuying be? Who could it be? Without a doubt, they are a key suspect that the Sundian police need to investigate. However, Hu Zuying did not mention to Chen Hui any specific information about this old friend. Just when Chen Hui was at a loss. March 20, 2012. It is also the 7th day after the body was discovered. The Sundian police suddenly presented Chen Hui with a customized silver bracelet. They believed that, as the Livian boyfriend of the deceased Hu Zuying, Chen Hui had significant suspicion of committing a crime. Murder charges. In the interrogation room of the Xiuandian County Detention Center, the investigating officers began interrogating Chen Hui, although the Xiuandian police repeatedly tried to persuade him, asking him to cooperate with the investigation, to take the initiative to confess. Chen Hui resolutely denied that he had ever committed murder. Until April 26, 2012, suspect Chen Hui was formally approved for arrest, and was transferred to the Yunnan Provincial Detention Center for custody. Over the next 6 months, the police officers of the Xiuandian Public Security Bureau conducted 14 attempts, focusing on Chen Hui, and made corresponding interrogation records. And Chen Hui, without exception, gave denials of his crimes in all instances. Despite this, Chen Hui's denial did not earn him his freedom. In November 2014, the Kunming People's Procuratorate charged with intentional murder. They brought charges against Chen Hui, because, according to the case officers at the Xiuandian Police Department, they have in their possession a Chen Hui is suspected of intentional murder based on multiple pieces of evidence. Time of the crime. Time of the autopsy March 13. The forensic doctors determined through the autopsy. The time of Hu Zuying's death was approximately 5 days before the autopsy was conducted. Furthermore, the specific time period should have been about 6 hours after her last meal, which was late at night on March 8, until the early hours of March 9. According to Chen Hui's own testimony, during this time period, he and Hu Zuying's activities were limited to their residence in an old community on Panjiang East Road in Kunming. Moreover, when Hu Zuying's body was found, she was still wearing a pink nightgown on her upper body. This indicates that at the time she was murdered, she was at home or in a resting state. In other words, Chen Hui was in the same room as Hu Zuying on the night of the incident. He had both the time and the means to commit the crime. He might have committed the act after the child fell asleep, or committed the crime in the absence of being at the scene. Besides that, the Xiuandian police found through their investigation activity trajectory that, according to the recollections of the community security guard, at noon on March 9, Chen Hui had driven back to the entrance of the apartment building. He then took some items out of the car. After that, the guard temporarily left due to some errands, although he couldn't be certain whether Chen Hui moved any other items from the house to the car. The Xiuandian police speculated that the reason Chen Hui suddenly drove home was likely to transport Hu Zuying's body, in preparation for a later burial, because they found through subsequent surveillance video checks that on the evening of March 9, at 10:22 p.m., the figure of Chen Hui driving appeared on the highway leaving Kunming. About an hour later, at 11:31 p.m., he exited the highway at the Jinshua interchange. This Jinshua interchange is approximately 10 kilometers away from the Red Manor, where Hu Zuying's body was buried. At 2:08 a.m. on March 10, 2:08 p.m., Chen Hui's vehicle entered from the Jinso entrance, once again entered the highway. He returned to the city of Kunming. Thus, the Xiuandian police speculate that Chen Hui likely took advantage of this late-night time window. Chen Hui likely took advantage of this late-night time period to leave the city, moved and buried Hu Zuying's body. And to verify this hypothesis, they drove down from the highway entrance and headed to the location of Chen Hui's villa at the Red Manor. They then went to the location of Chen Hui's villa in the Red Manor community. They immediately brought tools with them. After completing the burial action, the investigators drove back to the highway. Finally, the Xuandian police discovered. The entire process took a total of 1 hour and 24 minutes. This is related to the duration of activity displayed by Chen Hui in the surveillance footage. It is basically the same. The investigation of the case has reached this point. Chen Hui's suspicion of committing a crime has indeed become increasingly significant. Moreover, the Xuandian police have identified 2 major points of suspicion in the case. These are greatly related to Chen Hui's suspicion of committing a crime. There is a significant connection. Doubt 1. Text message from Hu Zuying. According to Chen Hui's testimony and evidence, on the afternoon of March 9th, at 3:21 p.m., he received a text message from Hu Zuying's phone. That was sent to him. If this text message was indeed sent by Hu Zuying, it would indicate that she was still alive at that time. This situation conflicts with the conclusion drawn by forensic experts, that Hu Zuying was murdered late on March 8th, and died in the early hours of March 9th. There is clearly a contradiction. In order to clarify the discrepancies in this matter, the Xuandian police first extracted the text message content from Hu Zuying, conduct a word-by-word and sentence-by-sentence analysis. As a result, they found that some wording in the text message from Hu Zuying, there is an anomaly, especially this sentence. Please pick up the child tonight, sorry for the trouble. According to Chen Hui's previous statements, he and Hu Zuying were in a live-in relationship. As for Hu Zuying's son, he often helped with picking him up and dropping him off from school. However, the wording in the text messages sent by Hu Zuying, it seems to be overly polite, does not align with the communication habits of Hu and Chen, as a couple in a live-in relationship. Besides that, the Xuandian police were also surprised to discover that this text message from Hu Zuying, it was through the base station of the Kunming Panlong District Maritime Bureau, sent out. Chen Hui's phone was also receiving text messages. It was receiving them through the same base station. That is to say, the phones of Hu and Chen were within the coverage area of the same base station at that time. According to the information provided by the Telecommunications Department, the Maritime Bureau's base station is a dedicated base station. Its coverage area is limited to this building in Panlong District. It is the office building of the China Maritime Bureau, and this office building is where the suspect, Chen Hui, works. By retrieving the surveillance footage from the Maritime Bureau building, the Xuandian police discovered that on the morning of March 9th at 7:45, Chen Hui arrived at work. By noon at 12:39, he had briefly gone out. About an hour later, at 13:27, he returned to the Maritime Bureau's office building. Until the afternoon at 4:36, Chen Hui left the office building alone. However, on the daytime of March 9th, the deceased, Hu Zuying, did not appear in the office building of the Navigation Administration. This indicates that the text messages received on Chen Hui's phone may not have been sent personally by Hu Zuying. Based on Chen Hui's activity trajectory in the Navigation Administration building, the Xuandian police speculate that Chen Hui should have taken control of Hu Zuying's phone, and then sent text messages to his own phone from the office building, attempting to create the illusion that Hu Zuying is still alive, and has plans to dine with friends. This is the first doubt. Through rigorous investigation, the Xuandian police seem to have unraveled the contradictions within. However, after this, Chen Hui unexpectedly launched an unexpected counterattack. Regarding this, we will elaborate on it later. Doubt 2. Chen Hui's motive for the crime. According to Hu Zuying's mother's account, Chen Hui and Hu Zuying had a good relationship in the beginning. Their feelings for each other were quite strong. However, later on, some issues gradually arose. These were difficult issues to mediate. First, there was Chen Hui's daughter. She was a rebellious teenager. She often argued and talked back to Chen Hui and Hu Zuying. Additionally, Hu Zuying had a bad temper. As a result, there were many conflicts between the two. At this time, Chen Hui, who was caught in the middle, gradually developed feelings of dislike and misunderstanding towards Hu Zuying's actions. He began to feel disgust and confusion towards her behavior. Then there was Chen Hui's personal life.